The Easter table was dressed in pastel cloth, crystal bowls of deviled eggs, glazed ham steaming in the center, and baskets of sugared bread that filled the room with warmth. Families laughed, children darted between legs with dyed eggs, and I sat quietly at the far end, smoothing the wrinkles of my old floral dress. I wasn't loud, I wasn't demanding, I was just there, like the furniture, present but unnoticed. "Mother!" my daughter Evelyn called across the room, her voice sharp and cutting through the cheer. "Don't sit there, that's for James." She pointed to her husband, her manicured hand trembling with the glass of wine she carried. I stood to move quietly, but James hadn't even looked up from his plate. He never did. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. The food was passed, laughter was shared, but not with me. My plate was served last, bones with hardly a slice of ham, wilted greens nobody wanted. I whispered a thank you anyway, trying not to draw attention. My fork scraped faintly. The moment felt like breathing in a house filled with smoke, choking, but no one noticing. It wasn't until I asked Evelyn if she had extra bread that the silence shifted. She snapped her gaze on me, her lips curling into the kind of smile that bruises without touching. She stood, lifted my plate with her manicured fingers, and in one motion she carried it to the trash bin. The clatter of porcelain and food-striking garbage was louder than the organ at church that morning. "There," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone, her eyes glinting with triumph. "Eat from there. It suits you." The laughter was soft at first, her friends giggling into their wine glasses, James smirking at the head of the table, my grandson wide-eyed but silent. The shame burned through my chest hotter than the roast lamb. My hands trembled on the edge of the tablecloth, but I didn't rise. I didn't defend myself. I only nodded, as if she'd given me a command and I was too obedient to resist. "You see?" Evelyn continued, tossing her golden hair like she was some hostess on television. "She's fine with it. That's what she knows." No one objected. No one stopped her. My fork sat on the table, lonely, untouched, and I sat back down with the dignity of a woman who had swallowed poison her whole life. I could feel the sting in my eyes, but I smiled. Thin, cracked, a smile that looked like surrender. They all believed it was. But I was not broken. No. As they clinked their glasses and returned to their feast, I folded my napkin slowly, precisely, and placed it beside the empty space where my plate once was. I let the silence return, the weight of humiliation pressing against my bones, and beneath it, deeper, sharper, something else stirred. Patience. Because I knew something Evelyn didn't. I knew that every single comfort she sat in, the grand table, the chandelier, the house itself, still carried my name. Every fork they raised was mine. Every rug her shoes clicked on had once been paid for by me. And while she believed she had thrown me in the trash with my plate, I had already begun writing a plan that would make her crawl to me, stripped of the arrogance she wore like a crown. I waited. I smiled. I let Easter pass as though nothing had happened, but Easter had marked the beginning. The day my daughter told me to eat from the trash, she unknowingly handed me the broom, and I was about to sweep her life clean. The next morning the house was silent, but the insult from Easter still echoed in every corner. My hands shook when I reached for the teapot, not from weakness, but from the storm I was holding back. Evelyn believed she had buried me beneath her pride, but she didn't see the woman I had become after decades of bending, shrinking, swallowing my words. She didn't see that humiliation was only fuel when the fire was already burning. For days, I carried myself as if nothing had happened. I smiled when she spoke, nodded when James barked orders across the room, even laughed faintly when her friends made comments about old people belonging in homes. But behind closed doors, I began pulling out the old boxes, the ones she never cared about, the ones that still smelled faintly of ink and cedar, deeds, bank slips, legal papers with my name etched in neat black ink. She thought the chandelier above her dining table belonged to her. She thought the car in the garage, the rugs under her polished heels, the paintings on her walls were hers by right. But no. Everything sat under my umbrella. Evelyn had been living in comfort only because I allowed it. I had been quiet, too quiet, because I wanted peace. But after Easter, peace had no place in my heart anymore. That night, I sat by the desk with the little lamp flickering weakly and wrote my first letter to the lawyer. My fingers ached with each stroke of the pen, but the ache carried purpose. I didn't ask for sympathy. I didn't ask for justice. I gave instructions, cold, clear instructions. In public, Evelyn continued her reign. She hosted brunches with too much champagne, her voice rising with laughter when she spoke about me. "She's practically a guest in her own life," I overheard her telling a neighbor. James chuckled, topping her glass. My grandson asked timidly if I wanted to sit with them at the table. Evelyn snapped, "She's fine where she is." And I was fine, because while she mocked me, I watched her blindly build a tower higher and higher, unaware I was quietly pulling out the foundation beneath it. The papers were signed within weeks. My lawyer, a quiet man with spectacles and a steady hand, didn't even raise his eyebrows when I told him what I wanted. "Are you certain?" he asked. I nodded. My certainty was carved deeper than bone. I didn't tell Evelyn. I didn't breathe a word. Instead, I folded laundry, baked bread, and watered the flowers as if nothing had shifted. She smiled at her friends over dinner, never realizing the dining set she boasted about would soon no longer be hers. She paraded around in silk robes, not knowing I'd already decided how long she'd keep the house that paid for them. But there were other details, darker ones that Evelyn couldn't predict. I began to look not only at what she had, but what she clung to. The comforts she flaunted were one thing, but the vulnerabilities she hid, the secrets she kept even from James, those were my true leverage. I started watching more carefully, listening. Evelyn had cracks in her perfect armor, and I was patient enough to find every single one. At night, when the house quieted and the echoes of her cruel voice faded, I whispered to myself the promise I had made on Easter. She would learn what it meant to eat from the trash. Only this time, it wouldn't be a plate. It would be her life. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, the way storms sometimes do, without thunder at first, just a strange, sharp stillness. Evelyn and James were preparing to host another one of their glittering dinners. She swirled around the house, giving orders about flower arrangements and wine pairings, blissfully unaware that this would be the last time she'd set a table in this house. I sat in my chair knitting as though I were invisible, but in my pocket rested the envelope from the lawyer, sealed and ready. By morning, everything with my name on it would be transferred. Her house, her car, her precious accounts. She didn't know yet that every luxury she had wrapped herself in like silk had already slipped through her fingers. The doorbell rang earlier than expected, and when Evelyn opened it, she was greeted not by her glamorous friends, but by two stern men in suits. She laughed nervously, brushing her hair back. "We're not ready yet. You must be early." But the men didn't smile. They carried documents. They carried authority. They carried my signature. "What is this?" Evelyn snapped, glancing from one to the other. James stepped forward, frowning, but his voice cracked when he read the first line of the letter. It was the transfer notice, the home, the assets, everything tied to my name, gone from her grasp. Her cheeks drained of color. "This is a mistake," she stammered. "This is my house." "No," I said, finally rising from my chair. My voice was steady, almost calm. "It was mine. You only lived here because I let you, and I don't anymore." She turned on me wild-eyed. You wouldn't, after everything I've done for you." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Everything you've done was for yourself. You forgot that kindness is not weakness. You forgot who built the ground you stand on, and now you'll learn what it feels like when the ground disappears." She lunged for the papers, but James pulled them back, reading again and again as if the words would change. He looked at me, panic replacing arrogance. "What have you done?" "I waited," I said. "I listened. I endured. And then I threw out every comfort you had left, just like you threw out my plate at Easter." The guests arrived moments later, expecting champagne and laughter. Instead, they stepped into a house humming with silence, Evelyn's shrieks echoing down the hall, her silk robe crumpled on the floor as she begged, pleaded, even knelt. Her friends stood frozen, watching the mighty woman unravel before their eyes. That night, I left with only one small suitcase. I didn't need the chandeliers or the marble floors. What I carried out was heavier than any gold. It was the look on Evelyn's face when she realized that power is not inherited nor stolen, but given. And I had taken back every piece I ever gave her. From that day forward, when people asked where Evelyn lived, no one could quite answer. Some said she moved to a small apartment downtown. Others said James left her when the debt surfaced. I never confirmed, I never denied. I simply smiled, remembering Easter and how she said the trash suited me. In the end, it suited her better. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.